welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're glad you're with us. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues, and we welcome back an old friend today, David Prater, District Attorney for Oklahoma County.
Yes, David Prater is a longtime friend and a frequent visitor on The Verdict. He is finishing up his first full term as Oklahoma County District Attorney and is thinking very seriously about seeking a second term. He's got a lot to tell us about what's going on in his office.
It's got to be one of the toughest jobs there is, District Attorney, Oklahoma County.
Well, you can rest assured that nearly anything you do is going to make some of the people mad. It's not going to satisfy everyone.
That's a lot of fun. District Attorney David Prater.
Does that sound like a mayor?
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. We'll be back right after this with David Prater.
Okay.
The idea of sending American money out of our own economy these days for foreign oil is madness. Yet we're spending $25 billion a month on foreign oil. America's 100-year supply of natural gas can break this pattern and strengthen our economy. See how it can create jobs, generate clean electricity, fuel our cars, and protect our environment at chk.com. Chesapeake, America's champion of natural gas.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
We're really pleased once again to welcome the Honorable David Prater joining us as a guest. This is his fourth appearance on The Verdict. David started his law enforcement career at the age of 19 as a deputy sheriff in Moore, then went and finished his undergraduate work at the University of Oklahoma, finished his law degree at the same institution, and became an assistant district attorney to Bob Macy for a number of years. Handling criminal matters, of course, then became an assistant attorney general, handling more statewide matters out of the AG's office, was in private practice for a number of years, and in 2006 was elected district attorney of Oklahoma County. And we're really pleased you give us your time again.
Happy to be here.
We're glad to have you.
Absolutely.
First term in its final year. Tell us what the first term's been like.
Well, it's gone by very quickly.
It sure has.
A blink of an eye.
It seems like yesterday you were elected.
That's right. It's gone by very quickly, but it's been an honor and very humbling and just a lot of work. It's a job that truly takes really 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. You're always doing something that seems related to the job. But again, it's been an honor and just very pleased to be where I am.
In general, define the job and maybe accentuate where you spend your time. What aspect of your job takes the bulk of the time?
Well, there's a lot of administrative duties when you're talking about an office with a $10.2 million budget, 160 total employees, 60 of those are lawyers, several unique divisions that handle, or specially assigned to handle certain types of cases. And so you have an administrative aspect to your job, but you're a lawyer, you're a prosecutor. And what I've tried to do is to make sure that I've stayed engaged in what my assistants are doing by myself handling the cases. So I try to mix it up and make sure that I am appropriately applying the proper amount of time to my administrative duties and taking care of the office, but also staying in the courtroom and keeping my head in the game to make sure I'm aware of what my young lawyers are faced with on a daily basis. It's busy.
How do you pick and choose which cases you'll become involved with? Is it by your own schedule or by the case itself?
It's actually mostly by the case themselves, and I'll tell you, the ones that I've really gotten involved in are the ones that are controversial, because when we've become involved in a controversial case, the last thing that I want to do is throw one of my assistant DAs in there and have to try a case that I filed and where they are going to be highly scrutinized. And so I want to make sure that if I'm going to make those tough calls, I'm going to be in there and be willing to try those cases as well. And that's really what has driven my involvement in many of the cases.
What is the mission of the District Attorney's Office? What would you tell our people, our viewers, the mission is?
Well, the mission really is to just promote public safety and make sure that the citizens of Oklahoma County are enjoying the lifestyle that they become accustomed to in this great city and this great county by keeping them safe, and to make sure that we always keep our eye focused on justice. And when you're dealing with people, you know, that's an uncertain thing sometimes, and it's really difficult many times to define what truly justice is in any given case. But we want to make sure that people who live in this city know that they have a DA's office that is engaged with law enforcement, working hand in hand with those wonderful municipal, state, county, and federal agencies that we have in this jurisdiction. We work every day to make sure that they stay safe, and it's going to maintain a good lifestyle for them in this city.
Talk to our viewers a little bit about a subject that you talked about last time you were on, prosecutorial discretion. There are cases that are handed to you by the police department or by the county sheriff's office or other law enforcement agencies, and it lands right in your lap. Should we prosecute, should we not? Has a crime been committed that we think we can win on or not? How do you evaluate those situations?
Well, I'll tell you what we do and what I do specifically. I look at a case, and then we apply the facts of that case to the law, and we determine what the right thing to do is in that case. And many times it jumps right out at you. You know what the right thing to do is. And even, you know, notwithstanding the hard hits you're going to take in the media and with public scrutiny, you've got to do that anyway. But really, the discretion that I enjoy is really that I am able to look at a case and say, listen, here's what I think is the right thing to do, and that's what we're going to do. And again, many times you know those hard hits are coming. You're going to be scrutinized very, very heavily by the media and some in the community that disagree with your decisions. But you know, they put me there to do a job, and it's a tough job, and we do it to the best of our ability based on the law and the facts.
Let me follow up on that just a minute. Do you delegate prosecutorial discretion downstream at all, or is the final decision only yours?
No, absolutely. I'll tell you, one thing I don't do is micromanage. Those assistants in our office are highly trained, outstanding human beings who, and really the only thing I ever ask them to do is make sure that justice is done, period. In any case, make sure that justice is done. And if they're asked why they did something in an individual case, that they can articulate the reason for doing it. And that's it. And so they have a great deal of autonomy on how to handle their case. Sometimes it may appear that they've handled the defendant lightly. And if they can articulate a reason for doing that, they're just fine. Or on the other side of it, it looks like maybe they've hit someone a little harder than they maybe should have, fairly, but it was a hard sentence. And they've been able, many times they're able to articulate that reason why. I just ask them to articulate the reason why they're doing what they're doing in a case, and always keep their eye on justice. Make sure that we're being fair to the victims and the citizens in this community, but also make sure we're being fair to the defendants in the process.
When you have the vast number of attorneys that are working under your leadership at the DA's office, how do you divide up the workload? Which parts of responsibility are each of those divided up into?
You know, we have several different teams. We have our sex crimes team, our domestic violence team, our gang prosecution team, our juvenile division, our civil division, and we have team leaders over each of those units. But really, Scott Rowland, my first assistant, and I are really directly engaged with all those team members and really available to work with those individual team leaders and individual team members. And we do that really by, like I said earlier, getting into the courtrooms and watching what's going on in the courtrooms, whether we're there individually to handle a case ourselves or to just observe. We're there to make sure we know what's going on and generally what's going on in the courtrooms and what kind of cases our assistants are handling.
When it comes to your budget, what are the revenue streams?
Revenue streams are state appropriations, which many people don't realize it, but state appropriations really only account for about half of what the DA's office needs every year to stay open. We are also able to generate money through bogus check fees. We collect bogus checks fees for merchants when we collect the bad bogus check and give that money over to a merchant. We also collect a fee from the defendant as well. We have many of some federal grants that have actually we brought in, again, without any additional cost to the Oklahoma taxpayer. These are federal grants that fund my gang unit and fund our domestic violence unit and fund some of our victim advocates. We have forfeitures and seizures. You know, many times if you're driving up and down the highway, you may see someone pulled over and it looked like police officers, Oklahoma City and Oklahoma County deputies, or have someone over the side of the road just tearing their vehicle apart. Well, what they're doing is if they have identified someone as a drug or a money runner and they are interdicting that those drugs going north and east and that money coming south and west. And what we're able to do, we are able to use those resources that we take from the drug dealers and apply them to what we do here. We proportion it out. Oklahoma City Police Department gets some, Oklahoma County deputies get some of the others, and we get some more as well. And we have prosecution probation fees that the legislature has now allowed us to go ahead and collect. We actually have low-level nonviolent offenders that our DA's office is able to supervise while they're on probation. And it's great because with DOC's budget problems, the Department of Corrections budget problems, their probation and parole officers are just really, they're just over their head with what they have to do. But we have several probation officers in our own office that are able to really respond very quickly to any kind of an issue that probationers may have.
David Prater is our guest. He's the district attorney for Oklahoma County. We'll be back with more right after this.
From the first grade on, I knew I wanted to be an artist. That's all I ever thought about. I approach it much different than the normal weaver in that I look at my warp yarns, which are your base yarns, as a palette. That gives excitement to the cloth because you never know what you're going to get. I'm sure it's something I feel, not something I talk about a lot, the spiritual aspect of it, but it is there, it's below the surface, and it's guiding me. I feel very blessed to be a Chickasaw. I feel like I have just been given this heritage. It gives me a whole reason for doing the beadwork patterns in my weave structures. Seeing the Chickasaw tribe fostering art, using art, and how valuable it is to the tribe is inspirational. And the creative thought, you know, it's in business, it's in economics. It's what gives us meaning, it's what gives us depth. It's what makes us see the beautiful of the world.
The oil and natural gas industry help provide a revenue that feeds our schools, providing a better education for not only my kids, but for children all over the state.
It will allow the schools to buy better equipment. We'll be able to hire qualified teachers, and all around to have a better educational experience.
The future has never been brighter for our students here.
We should be very proud of the oil and gas industry in Oklahoma.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and our guest, Oklahoma County District Attorney David Prater, and we're now going to move on and talk about the cold case unit.
Yeah, David, you mentioned before we came on the air that you had established a cold case unit. I'm familiar with the television show called Cold Case or something like that, but tell us what your unit does.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the most heartbreaking issues we deal with in the Oklahoma County Courthouse are families who have lost a loved one. And it's bad enough when they've lost a loved one and we've been able to identify a person to bring charges against and then hopefully get some answers for that family and bring someone to justice. But it's even more heart-wrenching when you have families who have been touched by violent crime and they don't have the answers. Well, I spoke to many of those families early on in my career as a law enforcement officer and as an ADA. And one thing I knew I wanted to begin when I came into the office was a cold case unit, because I knew we had a number of very high-profile cold cases here in Oklahoma City and Oklahoma County that had not been addressed, and we had family members out there waiting for answers. And so I talked to Bill City, Chief City, Oklahoma City Police Department, and he dedicated one of his homicide investigators, and I dedicated a retired Oklahoma City homicide investigator that works for my office. And we coupled those two together, and over the last 3 years, they've been able to solve 10 cold cases, truly cold cases. One as old as 1975, so we have a case over 30 years old that was solved 5 of those cases we brought to justice and have already received a conviction for those cases. So we have 5 more awaiting trial, and we have others that are in the pipeline. So I'm very pleased with that and be able to get those families some answers.
Well, the families must be grateful for that.
Well, you know, we owe them. We owe them. They've suffered a great loss.
I'm sorry, go
So
ahead.
the evolving issue of drug courts, how are we moving in that direction?
You know, really well. Terry White with the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, she's just been wonderful to work with. And with their budget issues, we're capped out at around 600 right now, 600 participants. We grew that from around 200 or 250 active participants when I took office to 600. And when you look at the cost savings, and then you look at you give someone the tool to actually address their addiction issues, and you help them fix themselves, you know, it's a winner on 2 fronts, and that is fiscally it's a winner because the Oklahoma County Drug Court alone, we're saving the state of Oklahoma $7 million a year in costs that would have been incurred by the Department of Corrections. And not just that, we're helping people fix themselves so they don't recidivate. They don't go back out after they've completed the drug court program and reoffend immediately. So I'm very proud of our drug court program, doing very well.
We have a loyal base of viewers, and they watch every week, but just for those who didn't watch last time we talked to you about drug courts, this is just for nonviolent offenders.
Right, yes, thank you. Nonviolent offenders whose crimes are driven by drug or alcohol addiction. That's
Okay.
right.
And let's go to domestic violence. What are we doing there? Because I know that's been a problem in the state of Oklahoma and Oklahoma City in general.
You know, it really has, and that was another area that when I came in, I pledged to the public. I said, listen, we are seeing greater and greater numbers of domestic violence homicides occurring in the Oklahoma City area. And one thing that you can do to attempt to work on those numbers and decrease those numbers is make sure early on in an offender's life in their criminal activity that you are addressing their issues appropriately. So I created a standalone, dedicated domestic violence unit which has 4 dedicated lawyers. All they do is domestic violence cases, so they can catch a domestic violence offender early on in their activity, and hopefully get them the anger management, hopefully get them the counseling, and get the family members that are affected by domestic violence either out of that home or get them appropriate counseling and assistance as well.
Are you seeing some reduction in the numbers?
Well, yes, but I'll tell you, unfortunately, domestic violence homicide is an area that is extremely difficult to be proactive about.
Yeah.
Well, because people need to ask for help long before the situation arises to that level, and that's why we push all these services, and there's help out there. But people are going to have to ask for it generally because it's a tough one for government to come in and fix when you're harmed by someone who lives in your house.
And that's exactly right. And people have to understand the cycle of abuse, the generational issues that come with domestic violence, and also the psychology of being victimized by domestic violence. Many times people wonder, why in the world would this woman not ask for help earlier on? Well, many times she feels trapped and feels like she doesn't have any options and must stay with her abuser.
Let's talk about gang violence a little bit. What's your office doing about gang violence in the county?
Well, another area I pledged to really focus on when I took office, and that was I was going to recreate the gang prosecution unit. Very proud of what they did. In 2007, when I took office, we had just entered a year at 245 drive-by shootings. Last year, 2009, 100. We've had a 60% decrease in drive-by shootings in Oklahoma County.
Wow.
We created a coalition with municipal, county, and federal officers who work every day on the streets of Oklahoma City to address the gang violence issue. And myself and the U.S. Attorney in the Western District of Oklahoma, we communicate very well to determine when we have a gang case that comes to our office, which system is best to address this individual offender's issues? Who best can get the most bang for the buck and get them off the street for the longest? And we've seen a dramatic decrease in the drive-by shootings and gang-related homicides because we've been able to focus our prosecutors on those gang cases. And that dedicated unit, all they do is prosecute gang-related cases, period. That's it.
Most of our viewers are aware of budgetary issues at the Oklahoma County Jail. I know you work with the sheriff who oversees the jail. Any success stories there to talk about in the operations that might help keep the costs down?
Sure. Actually, believe it or not, Mr. Rabbit's a public defender in Oklahoma County, and I sat down early in my term and I said, listen, we've got to get a handle on the way these dockets are run. There's a huge backlog here. We had 2,900 county inmates in the Oklahoma County Jail at that time. We've been able to decrease through efforts to really streamline our docket process and make sure that our assistants, both the public defenders and the DA's assistants, are ready to handle their cases on the first time they hit the docket. They're prepared to go on them. They know what they want to do on those cases. We've been able to decrease the daily count of inmates in Oklahoma County by 500. That's over $7 million savings to the Oklahoma County taxpayers because we have 500 fewer county inmates in the Oklahoma County Jail every single day.
And that's pretty much solely a function of moving the cases along.
Yes, sir, it is.
Not just letting them lag.
No, absolutely not. And like I said, when that case hits the docket the first time, my assistants are ready and Mr. Rabbit's assistants are ready as well. We know what we're going to do with that case and we get them moved along. We've also agreed with the courts, the Oklahoma County courts, that we would not have more than one continuance on that docket, on the preliminary hearing conference docket. And so that's helped a great deal as well.
But the Victim Services Division, what's going on there?
Well, you know, the Victim Services Division, it's a group of outstanding human beings who care a lot about our victims. And really what they do is they help walk victims through the process. And many times you have people that, you know, they're lost. They've lost a loved one, they've been victimized by violent crime, and they don't know what to do to take that next step. We'll walk them through the victim's compensation process to hopefully be reimbursed for some of the expenses that they've incurred, but also really it's just a shoulder to lean on and someone to talk to and someone to help walk them through and explain the criminal justice system that really is pretty much just alien to most people that we deal with on a daily basis. They've not been through this process, they don't understand it, and they provide a great service to these victims and these survivors. I'm just so proud of them.
And now the kind of the political process, running for re-election, voters have had 4 years to kind of gauge your action. You know, how do you explain to voters the progress that's been made in the district attorney's office?
Well, they hired me, and I'm going to ask them to rehire me, and I'm going to ask them. You know, when do you have someone that's running for office make promises to you, and then at the end of their term, you look back and you say, "Wow, this person promised us that they would do all these things, and they've done every single one of them." I've done everything with the help of many outstanding assistants. Believe me, I didn't do it alone. Many wonderful people in that office have worked very hard to accomplish our goals, and we've done every single thing we said we would do when I ran for office the first time. We're going to ask the citizens of this county to put us back in that office and continue our hard work.
Let me ask you one final question. You've had some priorities you've been working on for 4 years. If you're reelected, do you have any additional or new priorities you'd want to look at? Instead of just keeping on, do you have something new you're going to focus on?
Well, not really completely new, because I've been working on it the last 4 years as well. But I tell you, we've got to be involved in more proactive work out in the community, and really more intervention out in the community, because if we're going to ever have get a good grip on crime in the Oklahoma County area and in Oklahoma City generally, we need to get involved in children's lives earlier. So we've really reached out to faith-based organizations, community-based organizations. The City of Oklahoma City and many of our other larger municipalities are doing a great job of actually getting out in the community and helping touch children at younger and younger ages. You know, Carl Springer, the superintendent of the Oklahoma City school system, says if we keep kids in school and we teach them to read at grade level by grade 3, there's a great likelihood that they will never drop out of school and they'll never get involved in the criminal justice system, which means they won't be involved in gangs as well. And so we're trying to do more intervention and prevention work as well out in the community. Now that seems odd for a prosecutor, but I take a holistic view and a holistic approach to my job. Not just put people in prison. That's the last thing I want to do. If I can avoid that, if I can help fix someone or help avoid someone being victimized by crime, that's what I want to do. And so we're going to continue to do that work and really try to focus a little bit more of our resources out in prevention and intervention as well.
All right. David Prater is his name. He's running for district attorney again. He's been our district attorney at Oklahoma County for the last 4 years. David, thanks for coming back on The Verdict.
Happy to be
Thanks,
here.
and good luck to you.
Right.
Thank you.
And Kent and I'll be back in just a moment with a final word on today's show.
good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
And we are back for a final segment on today's edition of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're wrapping up his show with Oklahoma County District Attorney David Prater.
Yeah, David came on our show 4 years ago after he got elected, and he told us what he was going to do, and he came on today and told us what he had done. And it's amazing those things match up just almost identically, and it's very unusual for someone to promise a number of things and come through on every one of them. He's done an outstanding job for this county.
We began the show by talking about how difficult the job was, and
Yes.
I think you listen to all the different elements that his office deals with, and guys, I think it's more difficult than I even imagined when I said it was a very difficult job in the beginning. I can't imagine, but obviously we rely on he and his staff greatly, and he was generous to share the credit among his staff. Let's go to some website information. DistrictAttorneyPrater.com is how you can get more information on the DA. And also go to our website and tell us about a show that you'd like to see right here on The Verdict. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week with another edition.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.